Recording this to the cloud. This is Indiana University, Bloomington, R678, spring of 2024, week 14. And can we do any better than this? We have a special issue of a journal that we're reading from this week, where I have a co-authored copy of an article with Michelle Gribbins from Illinois. We've got Michigan in the house as well. Ahmed, who's a former student in IST, and his wife is also a former student in IST, and they're going to talk about their article second tonight after Michelle and I talk about our article. But not only that, we have a third and fourth article tonight, and we have the person who organized the entire special issue, took a lot of time doing this. Stephanie Blackman is with us tonight twice, not once, but twice, because she's going to start off the evening discussing what this special issue was intended to be, what it actually became, and where she hopes this is going in the future. So Stephanie, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, what you did in terms of the special issue, your intentions for doing it, and what you felt it became? Were you satisfied with what happened as a result, and what you might recommend people do in the future before Michelle and I take over for discussion of our article? So Stephanie, the floor is yours now.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the invitation, Kurt.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
And I'm not sure, I think I don't hear you. I'm sorry. For some reason, can we get a mic check? Bo, can you give me a mic check?
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Can everybody hear me?
I've got you, yes.
Okay.
You hear Michelle? Can you hear Michelle? Can you give me a mic check, Michelle?
Yes. Hi, everyone.
Okay, we hear you as well. Stephanie, back to you.
All right.
We gotcha.
Right, thanks. I appreciate the invitation, everybody. I'm Dr. Stephanie Blackman. I'm an associate professor in the School of Education at William & Mary. My research focuses on technology integration in higher education. I have a specific focus on privacy, however, which is how the special issue came to be. I felt that there needed to be a space where people from different areas, different disciplines, talked about privacy and technology integration in higher education and balancing the challenges associated with that, but also thinking about some of the benefits the technology holds and how we can address privacy as we also bring in these various technological innovations. So when I came up with the idea, I emailed Claire and I said, hey, I've got this idea. Do you want to work on this with me? And she said, yeah, sure. So we co-edited the special issue together and then also co-authored the paper that Kurt mentioned. I'll talk more about that when I'm with you again at 7. So the goal really was, I do a lot of interdisciplinary work. Most of my work is with people from all other areas. So I work with philosophers and computer scientists and computer engineers and people from public health and people from law and our information security people. So I wanted the issue to reflect the interdisciplinarity that exists for solving these really complex problems that are essentially related to aspects of cybersecurity, like privacy mitigation and the ethical integration of technology. So the issue then did exactly that from my perspective. We have a number of different articles, as you all have seen, and you'll hear from some of the people who authored those tonight. But I do think it accomplished that. It accomplished that interdisciplinarity. It accomplished answering some of these really complex questions about privacy awareness and privacy mitigation in higher education. And I think it also brought together a lot of different voices, because again, that's how I think we start to solve these problems. That's how I think we start to work through these issues, by understanding that we cannot do that in silos. So my hope is that people will continue to engage with the special issue, continue to refer to it. There were suggestions, there are cases, there are frameworks and all kinds of things that have come out of that. So I hope that people continue to use those and employ those so that we can be much better about the ethical integration of technology, specifically as it relates to privacy, than we maybe have been so far.
Wonderfully said.
I don't know if people in the room realize where you work. William and Mary is actually, in some people's minds anyhow, the oldest higher education institute in the entire USA, even older than Harvard, some claim. So Stephanie, is that rumor true? Is it the
I am
oldest?
not going to get in the middle of that argument on a recording. We say second oldest around campus. Some people may have arguments about whether or not it's the oldest. I won't get into the debate about 1636s and whatnot. So
So what year were you founded as a university?
do you know, I actually don't remember. It was when we do the Charter Day celebration, they say second oldest. In the publicity that goes out, they say second oldest. I don't remember the specific date, but as I said, I'm not going to lean either way on that.
Yep. So my book, The World is Open, was read as part of a class there, and I got interviewed by folks on a virtual meeting. I visited them face to face. So I've been on the campus, lovely place. A little confusing at night, the highway system to get to, because there's many roads that lead there.
Yes.
But I had a conference a little further south down in Newport for the military after that. But I did have a lovely time there, and I recommend it highly. There was a well-known faculty member there who came from UT Austin and was working there. I think she's still there. What's her name? She has the collaboration online and other things.
No, so I remember
Judy Harris
told me
is
about
there.
this.
Yeah,
Judy retired. I want to say it's been at least a year or two now that she's been retired. Yes.
Yep. She was the first person doing global collaboration and lesson plans and all this when the web started, and had a huge following, including myself. And I think she came to Bloomington to do a presentation once in the late 90s on all that she was doing. And she started at UT Austin and went to William and Mary after that. But really good faculty at William and Mary. It's the buildings just that they have on campus. I'm just in awe for a smaller-ish college. Just the number of facilities on your campus and the architecture. The quality, it's just lovely. And the brick that they hold all the buildings, it's just a lovely color. Yeah.
We do have the Wren building, so something done by Christopher Wren here on campus. So and it's a very lovely building as well.
Yes, it is. So can you tell us, before we go to Michelle's presentation, can you tell us how hard it is to do a special issue, and any advice you have for others in doing a special issue of a journal? Because we're reading only special issues in this class, 15 weeks of special issues. And this week, we have not only the special issue of BJET that you did, but as an alternative choice, there's another special issue in the exact same issue of BJET on tech integration in higher education in Africa, philosophical, theoretical, and policy practices. And there's one author who's in both issues. His name is Alex Kumi Yabawa, and he's going to be presenting last tonight. He's in both special issues. So you want to tell us a little bit about, give us advice a little bit about how to do one of these?
So it is very hard. I will not sugarcoat that. But I'm seeing a note from Ahmed in the chat. So that is not what made it hard. So there's a lot that
working with Ahmed made it hard. Okay.
No. Everybody was wonderful. Ahmed, because we had to have a phone call. So what happens, you have this idea, it has to be approved, it has to go for BJET anyway, it has to go through all of the same processes it goes through if you are just submitting to BJET cold. Only there's an additional layer of having to convince people that what you want to talk about is actually worthwhile. It was challenging initially because people sometimes get confused about privacy and security. They get a little confused about other kinds of privacy implications outside of data analytics and other components that we commonly think of. And so having to build the case initially was the first part. Then once we built the case, you've got to find the reviewers within the system, and that can be really challenging. And if people aren't available, you have to find more people. You need at least a certain number of people to review each article. We knew we wanted about 10 in the issue. We wanted it to be really robust. So that part alone was challenging. And then when feedback comes, and the feedback may be, you're trying to balance what the reviewer has said with what the author's intentions are, with the intentions of the special issue. And so Ahmed, in the chat, was referencing a call that we had about just that, about having to be a bridge between the reviewers and the authors as the lead editor for this special issue. And so it sometimes meant getting on email a couple of times. It sometimes meant having phone calls with people. And it was great to do that. They were on vacation and we had a quick phone call. So it involved that. There was an author who was just getting started with writing and wanted to be in the issue. And the paper needed more work, and working with them on that and working through helping them to understand what was happening with the feedback and everything. So I think it's very worthwhile. And I stand behind that greatly because I'm really pleased with our issue and the way it came out and all the wonderful contributors we had to the issue. But balancing all of that is a critical component of making sure the special issue is a success. And having to talk with the editors and then the managing editors and then having conversations with reviewers via email. All of those things are a component of it, but I do believe that it's still a very worthwhile endeavor.
Right. So you worked with Claire Major at Alabama on this, and Claire's got several books. I highly recommend you all look up Claire. Maybe Bo can put up Claire Major's site. I have some inserts in one of her books or two of her books, but she's a wonderful collaborator. You're lucky to have, fortunate to have worked with her. Was she your advisor, or was
She was. Claire and I I went to Alabama specifically so that I could work with Claire. I knew going into my PhD program that I wanted to focus on technology in higher education. Claire, I knew that I wanted to be a qualitative researcher. Claire, of course, has work on online teaching and learning. She was doing a lot with that, still does a lot with that and with teaching and learning, and is now over Alabama's new center for teaching and learning, in addition to the K. Patricia Cross Academy. But I knew early on what I wanted to do and what I wanted to focus on. I wrote about it in my essay. And so they accepted me into the program. I started working with Claire as her graduate assistant. I deferred a year to go be a writer and then came back and did my PhD program. So yeah, I've been working with her throughout the entirety of my time at Alabama. She was my advisor, my dissertation advisor. And then once I started branching off into my own areas, like the area of privacy, that's I've been doing that for the past few years in the ethical technology integration piece, which, as I said, puts me in that cybersecurity space a little bit more. Still saw an opportunity to connect that back to what's happening in higher ed. And so that's when I reached out to Claire and said, hey, I have this idea. Do you think you might be interested in working on it with me? So yeah. So
the new dean at Alabama is my former colleague at Indiana, Joyce Alexander. She and I were hired at for the same job at Indiana, actually. They just made two jobs out of it. She's down there now. So before you're going to have to leave and come back. I think you have something else you're doing. So Stephanie will come back. Was the article that went through the most revisions the article that Michelle and I wrote?
I can't say that for sure. The other part is that there are so many moving pieces.
Because Michelle and I did one, wasn't it August last year, Michelle? It was the end of July, and then it was first week of August, second week of August. Every week there was a revision, I think we did.
There were a lot of revisions.
Yeah, and I don't say this negatively, it's just a mixed bag. As anyone knows who's ever submitted anything for review, it can be a mixed bag and you're not really sure sometimes what reviewers are looking for, but the work they do is very critical. I think we had some challenges with going through the system and finding the right people to match with the papers, but we got it done in the end. So
Yes,
and
And it improved the article.
it improved the
Yeah.
article, but just saying. So we probably should go on to our article because Ahmed's waiting to go second. So Michelle, so thank you, Stephanie, very much. That was a great introduction to this special issue, and it lets Riza and the other students here, Jennifer, and all the others, and Esther, who's here. Some of these are visiting scholars, so they're actually not enrolled, but they want to hear about this special issue. They've been attending every week, so yeah, thank you very much on this. We'll see you in an hour, about 45 minutes or so. Pop back in here, and Vanessa's here too. So Michelle, would you like to tell us, and I'll jump in with some info on this presentation as well.
Sure.
This is Michelle's dissertation. She's an EVD student, or was at Indiana. She almost has a PhD from University of Illinois in business, maybe management or something like that.
It was information systems.
Info
Yes.
same as accounting, in some places they put them together. So she's worked hard on this second dissertation project, and the title here is An Exploration of Instructors' Perceptions about Online Proctoring and Its Value in Ensuring Academic Integrity, which is both qualitative and quantitative in nature. Initially, Michelle was going to present the qualitative parts, but she decided, and I agreed, to add some of the quantitative. Not a lot, but she's got some quantitative in here. So it's a mixed method study. And Michelle is, one of the best students we've ever had here at Indiana. And I enjoy working with her. I've known her for a long time because I'd come out to Springfield and do talks from time to time. And some of the colleagues there introduced me to her. And she's in one of the books I have on MOOCs and open education around the world. I think you've got a chapter in the book. So
Right. And I was assigned to read my own chapter in this very class.
There you go. So Michelle, take over for a bit while I catch my breath.
Absolutely. How long should I go just to pace the presentation?
So if you did a 15-minute or so presentation, 12 to 15 minutes, then we can ask a few questions.
Okay.
That'd be great.
All right, very good. All right, so as Kurt mentioned, this was my dissertation, and a subset of this, my dissertation work, is what got into the special issue. When I did my dissertation, it was a mixed method type of study. We did some quantitative analysis as well as qualitative, and when I got the results of my survey that I did, the qualitative was so rich that it alone was sufficient for this article that we worked on. And so I graduated last year from the program. Highly recommend, if you're an online student, to attend graduation, no matter where you're at. It's a wonderful time to meet all of your classmates. And I should say that too, that for my job, I'm the director of our Center for Online Learning Research and Service here at UIS. And so like Dr. Blackman, I chose to go to IU because of Dr. Bonk. I knew who he was before I even applied to programs. And once I got accepted there, I decided that there was no other institution for me. I was going to Indiana. So when I looked at my dissertation work, when I started the program, I knew I wanted to do something in online proctoring especially. Prior to that, I was a full-time faculty member in our Management Information Systems program, and we serve a lot of online students. And we had this issue of online integrity in our classes. We did exams in our classes, and we continued to run into this issue. And so when I started at Indiana, I knew that I wanted to focus my research effort on online integrity in some capacity. So I settled on online proctoring eventually. When you look at the literature, ensuring online exam integrity has been a major challenge. It has been for a long time. Students have indicated that the lack of monitoring makes it easier for them to cheat and get away with cheating. Online proctoring is one solution, possible solution for improving online integrity. And so I did my research to look at online proctoring specifically. At many institutions, the instructor is the one who gets to determine whether online proctoring is used or not. Sometimes it's a departmental decision. But sadly, there's very minimal incentive for anyone to adopt online proctoring. And it takes a lot of work on the part of the instructor to do it. The existing research at the time of my dissertation on online proctoring focused on these three primary areas. So the impact online proctoring had on student grades, the impact it had on the time to complete the examination, and the impact on student learning. There were a few adoption studies on online proctoring, but most of them were focused on students' adoption of online proctoring. I wanted to take a look at instructors' adoption of online proctoring and their desire. So for those of you who are not familiar with online proctoring, just to give you a brief overview, there's a variety of vendors out there that provide online proctoring. The one that we focused on our study was that live human online proctoring. So this is through a webcam like we are now, where someone is actually monitoring the student completing their exam in whatever space they decide. There's other types where it's fully automated, where AI is watching the video and flagging when suspicious behaviors might occur. And then there's a hybrid approach where it's recorded and then a human actually goes in and watches the video after the fact. So we focused our research on that live human proctoring primarily. There's 4 research questions that we asked, and I based the research questions on the unified theory of acceptance and use of technology. So this is, if you're not familiar, this is a very well-known research model on technology acceptance, looking at what drives people to want to use specific technology. And so the 4 questions we had, one is looking at an instructor's intention to use online proctoring and whether it was influenced by the expectations of the performance of the online proctoring tool. We also looked at whether the amount of effort required had an impact on an instructor's intention to use online proctoring, whether students influenced an instructor's use of online proctoring. And this one's kind of surprising because based on my own experience teaching, it went both ways, where sometimes students influenced you not to want to use it, and then other times students influenced you to use it because it provided them some conveniences. And then we looked at some moderating variables as well to see if they influenced whether an instructor is more likely to use online proctoring. So my research model, you can see here, we had 5 hypotheses overall with those direct relationships between performance expectancy, effort expectancy, and social influence on behavioral intention. And then we had these moderating variables here at the bottom that we looked to see if they moderated that relationship. So when I did my research, we did a survey, a Qualtrics survey, and I did a convenient sampling approach. Because of my job, I knew a lot of people in the online space across various institutions. So I reached out to those individuals and asked them if they would share the survey with the people that they worked with at their institutions. And I encouraged them to continue to share the survey with others. So at the end of about a month time, we had 191 individuals open up the survey that was on Qualtrics. And the survey was set up where if you weren't a higher ed instructor, you wouldn't proceed with the survey. So 11 of the individuals were not higher ed instructors. 18 of the responses weren't complete. There were 4 surveys that might have been possible misconduct. The same answer was selected for every single question. So we threw those 4 out, but that left us with 158 usable surveys. Those respondents represented a range of institutions from 4-year privates, 4-year publics, large institutions, very small institutions, community colleges. They were in the United States primarily, but there were some that were international as well. And you can see here the percentage of individuals who were full-time tenured or tenure-track faculty who responded, and then those that had experience with teaching online. I don't want to spend too much time on the descriptive statistics, but I just wanted to share it with you that I used a 7-point Likert scale to measure those UTALT variables, and the means of those items are here. When I looked at the various groups that as we broke up the respondents, there were some differences that were realized in the groups. The big one was whether or not they had previous experience using online proctoring. That had a significant difference between their perception or their willingness to use it again in the future. I did structural equation modeling for that quantitative part. I did, you can see here the model. We did confirmatory factor analysis first to see how well the variables or the measures paired up. There were just two, I think there was one that it was recommended that we removed from the model, and that was SI3. It was below the threshold, but it was, there was a covariance with another one. So we left it in the model. Ran all the tests for reliability and validity, and those came out okay. The structural model, when we ran it, it showed these results. So the first hypothesis was supported. If an individual thought it would help with academic integrity, they're more likely to use it. That almost seems obvious. The other two were not supported. When we looked at the group level analysis, we found that social influence was supported based off of whether an individual, what their level of online teaching experience was. With individuals that had less online teaching experience were more likely to be influenced by their students on whether to use online proctoring or not use online proctoring. So it's kind of disappointed with the results of the hypotheses, but it was still informative. Where the gold was I had one question that you can see here. Provide any additional thoughts about or experiences with using online proctoring that you'd like to share. And so of those 158 individuals who filled out the survey, 118 of them provided open-ended responses here. So the people who took the survey were pretty passionate about the subject. And doing the thematic analysis, 6 themes arose. The first theme was
Michelle?
already, yes.
Before you go to the gold, I just
Yes,
want to point out that Michelle didn't know a thing about structural equation modeling when she designed her study and
No.
learned it. You all might be frightened for high-level advanced statistics, and there are free courses out there, and not so free, that you can enroll in and take and learn SEM model, structural equation modeling, what it is. Do you want to tell us what courses you took to get
There
ready?
is a professor at an institution in the Middle East, I don't remember which institution, who has a whole series of YouTube training on how to use SPSS to do structural equation model. He was my savior with regards to getting through this part of my dissertation. I think his name was Hamed. If anyone wants to know, I can find and share that YouTube channel with him. It was amazing. It walked through every single step all along the way. It was a great resource.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that. So yes, if anyone's interested, do send me an email or send Michelle an email. We can put her email in the chat here before she goes. And like I said, she's like, I don't know this stuff, but this is really interesting. These videos are great. And sure enough, she was able to do it on her own. So without
Michelle, was his name Minhaj Raymond?
It wasn't that one. Before I log off, I will share the link in my file because I know I still have it bookmarked on this computer.
So Bo,
Yes,
if you found one, share the link of if it's another professor out there, share that link, Bo. And Michelle, keep going with the qualitative.
Great. So the 6 themes that we that arose from the analysis of that one comment. Instructors wanted to share their strategy for improving academic integrity. And some of them talked about online proctoring, but some of them talked about other approaches they use to improve integrity, such as various ways of setting up their exams that they thought helped improve integrity, such as randomizing it with their students, having time limits for each question. Some people talked about alternative assessments that they use instead of exams to help improve online academic integrity. And then some talked about approaches that they use to reduce the pressure that students may have with taking online exams, such as reducing the value that those exams have in the overall course, so that way students are less likely to cheat if they were taking them. The second theme that arose was some individuals shared benefits of online proctoring above and beyond academic integrity, such as improving learning, empowering students to be able to take the exam when it works for them, when it works for their families. And some indicated that by giving them the location choice and time choice, they could work around their lifestyle to have their students or their children in bed and then take the exam so they could really focus on it. And then improving the instructor workload was another benefit that was mentioned. The third theme was the challenges that instructors faced when using online proctoring, the inconvenience of getting it set up and working with the vendor, the technical challenges, the quality overall of the proctoring process, even though the proctor claimed that they were watching the students, the instructors felt that they sometimes weren't watching it and it wasn't at the quality that they would have expected if they had an in-person proctor. And then the challenges of handling any integrity issues as they came up. The fourth theme was that proctoring can be a burden for the students, the additional resources required for the technology, the additional expenses, challenges in using the technology, and that increased anxiety of knowing that they were being watched by a proctor during their exam time. The fourth, and this is where our special issue came in, the fifth theme that arose was related to some of these legal, ethical, and social concerns, such as privacy, the discrimination. If you've looked at online proctoring literature, there's been concerns over time that individuals with darker complexions tend to get marked as having behaviors that are suspect more so than individuals that have lighter complexions. Accessibility is a huge concern, the ability to actually use the software to take exams, and then that general sense of not online proctoring is not trusting your students was a concern for some of the instructors. The sixth one was that there is a need for online proctoring, and there are some strong use cases for having it. There are certain disciplines, mathematics being one in particular, where it over and over again was mentioned that we have to have this for our discipline. Otherwise, we can't confirm that our students know what they need to know. Certain student groups were called out more often as ones where that instructors wanted to use online proctoring, primarily those lower level undergraduate levels, freshman year, sophomore year. Once students got into that graduate level work, there was less concern about students cheating in online exams. And then certain high stake exams, these were ones like the capstone exams for a program or those licensure type of exams that students would take for getting licensure. So those were ones where instructors had called out that online proctoring is useful. So looking, I know we're getting shorter on time, so just a quick run through of the results. We found that the performance expectancy was a strong determinant. Some of the implications here is that if instructors or institutions wanted us to use online proctoring, promoting that usefulness is a good approach and providing recommendations on when and how to use it. For our second research question, the effort expectancy was not a significant determinant. So even if institutions provided training workshops and job aids, they may be helpful, but they're not going to motivate anyone to use the tool. It wasn't driving use. The third and fourth questions are intention to use, influencing, and our instructors' intention to use influenced by their students. So in general, it was not, but it was for those newer online instructors. They were more influenced by their students' desire to use or not use online proctoring. So implication there is for newer online instructors, provide them with more insight into the advantages and disadvantages of using online proctoring and give them opportunities to discuss it with others who have experience using it. There's some additional findings that we found was that instructors need help in interpreting the feedback that comes from an online proctored exam, and then it's not a solution for every situation, not every instructor, student, or course. So future research opportunities, we can continue to look at the relationships with online proctoring to confirm that it's the primary determinant is performance expectancy, and looking at that online teaching experience as an impact is something we could look at again. All of this data was gathered in what year was it? Fall of 2023, no, 22, fall of 2022. And the last bit of data I collected was in November of fall of 2022. So it was right before ChatGPT came out to the general public. So it'd be interesting to revisit this at some point now that there's different concerns that instructors have with AI tools and how they can impact integrity of assignments and deliverables. Looking at students' experiences of online proctoring is another opportunity for future research, and then just reviewing those integrity policies at different institutions. So with that, I will open it up for any questions that you all may have. Oh, Kurt, you're muted.
I was just saying it's really delightful to hear it, even though I know it and I've read it and I've participated. I still great to hear you summarize it again. So thank you very much for that. We have a couple of issues and questions that have come up from people here. Lena and Jill particularly want to raise some things. I want to point out a couple of things there. While we collected data, Michelle collected data in 2022, the idea for this was a little bit before 2022.
Yeah.
You want
Yeah.
you want to tell them what year you had this idea?
Right. So I actually came into the program knowing that I wanted to do something in this area. And so every assignment I did, so if you still have a lot of courses left, take this advice. Every assignment I did for every class, I was doing it toward this topic area, which helped when it came to the point of doing my quals and then moving into the dissertation. I was ready to go until March of 2020. I got my dissertation approved. The proposal was approved in January of 2020. March of 2020, you all know what happened. I'm in a Center for Online Learning at my institution. There was no dissertating for the next year and a half at all. So it took me a while to get back into it, but finally we got back into it and then we were able to make progress.
Yeah, we're a little worried, weren't we, for a bit?
I was, especially since this is my second time at a doctoral
Yes.
degree.
Yeah, that did add to that. I also want to point out that she graduated last year in May with a whole bunch of other advisees of mine, and she had this published before the end of that year in a top-tier SSCI journal. It is unusual to have your dissertation published within 6 months of your dissertation, or at least graduation. I forget, you're defended maybe in February or March.
It was March, right?
Yeah. So within 9 months, she had this publication out, not just accepted, but out. And sometimes it takes a year to even get accepted, another year to get out. So by getting in a special issue, Michelle was able to get this streamlined a bit. And I'm sure Ahmed will talk about that too. And he's probably got some similarities of some topics. So he's going to talk about ethics, I think, a little bit. But we'll see if he can make some connection between the two. Jill and Lena had posted some questions, but Lena went first, or at least comments. So Lena, why don't you jump in here?
Hi, Michelle. First of all, thank you for your presentation. I think it's offered me a very new perspective about the research. Actually, I did this kind of things before, a lot of practical thing, and also have discussed with some teachers about this field, but we've never think about doing the research from this perspective. So I typed in the chat column. So all my courses in my university in China actually nowadays conducted online with remote proctoring, and students assess exams through their mobile phone, the app on their smartphones, and they begin to click the start exam. And then the phone's front camera performs a kind of facial recognition. And during the exam, both the front and the rear cameras of the phone capture images simultaneously. So usually the teacher will observe all this test period, the process, and I can receive the alerts if the students navigate away from the app interface. But of course, sometimes the student will report after the exam to me that it's kind of an internet problem. So usually we just give the student another chance if it is just within like 30 seconds or 1 minute. So among your during your presentation, you offered a future research suggestion. I think that one is very interesting. That is about students' experience. So do you have any more suggestion on that perspective?
There has been some research on the students' experience. There was much more so on that than on instructors' experiences when I was doing my literature review. So there is some areas already, but I think it's important for us to keep doing it because I think students are becoming more aware of privacy concerns themselves and they're more vocal about their concerns, which is a good thing. So as they raise awareness, it influences other students as well and what their perceptions are. So things that we were doing 15, 20 years ago when I started using online proctoring, we can't just assume every student's going to be happy using it. And because some students are just going to, from the beginning, say, no, I'm not using it for good reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Thank
is
you.
intrusive. Yeah, yeah, absolutely great questions.
Jill, you want to jump in?
Yeah, probably Lena has experience of being a teacher, and I have the experience of being a student who is being monitored. Because if you would like to become the so-called Google certified educator, probably both has similar experiences. You have to, you will be shown a lot of, test items on your screen, and they will request you, insist you turn on your laptop or computer camera. Then you will be monitored. If you see anywhere else or check anything on your laptop, to prove your integrity.
Right.
Yeah, but by the way, I think I especially admire your research method in this study because it's a method that I have never used in the past. But you collect students' response from the open-ended questions and form their responses into probably some critical components, and then use these components to form your hypothesis and use the SEM to examine the values, the strength, and the relationship among these components, right?
Right. So what
I love this mixed method.
Yeah, no, and it was insightful too, because some of the interpretations that we would have had from just the quantitative might not have been as, I wouldn't say correct, or having those qualitative interpretations helped us understand the results we got from the quantitative data.
I think this is a very genius method to combine the qualitative and quantitative methods together. So thank you for inspiring me.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
again, I was shocked when I got the data and saw how many qualitative comments we had from the respondents. So it does say that there was a lot of self-selection in those who chose to do the survey because they were passionate about the topic. One way or the other, they had some passion about it.
So Jill is from Taiwan and just finished her dissertation, and she's a visiting scholar here. And Lena is from China as an English teacher, along with Alicia from China, English teacher. Sumin is a new visiting scholar from Korea. Sung-hee is a new visiting scholar, relatively new. She's going everywhere she can in Bloomington and Indiana, but she's also from Korea. Anyone else want to ask a question here?
I also want to ask a question for Michelle. I think that this is truly inspiring research. I'm curious about the question when conducting online proctoring, how can teachers address network instability problems, especially for high-stake exams? Thank you.
Great question. So one of the things I do here at UIS when we work with faculty is I tell them that if they're going to use online proctoring, make it very clear to your students before the exam what to do when there's technical issues, because that helps reduce some of the anxiety that students have. So if the students know if the exam shuts down, if I can't get connected, I need to call my instructor's voicemail and leave a message right then with what's going on, then that way, there's at least a trace of what's happening. So giving the students a plan on what to do when something happens unexpectedly is a good approach.
So I think we're probably going to have to go to Ahmed. Okay, Sung-hee has a question. Last question, then we're going to have to go to Ahmed. Sung-hee.
Yes, thank you. It's a short question. I am express your methodology, and I just wonder if what kind of vector rotation you use. It's a paramix or open limit, and why do you use this? Why do you use this kind of a rotation?
Can you elaborate on? My headphones are a little staticky, so I'm having a little bit of trouble. So you say primary location?
No. What kind of vector rotation you use when you vector analysis? It's a there is a Verimax
Oh, there's Verimax rotation.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. It's been a year since I've looked at this. So let's see.
My first job at West Virginia University, I had a neighbor, and his name is Ben Bailey, and he'd come over and I'd be doing factor analyses. And he said, Curtis, you're doing voodoo statistics. That's voodoo statistics. Meaning he was a stat professor, and he didn't believe in doing Verimax rotations or any of those things. He was a humanist at heart, trained by one of the premier humanists in the country, actually, but he happened to be teaching stats. It's a longer story I don't have time for, but anyways, some people live and die by factor analyses, and others almost didn't get tenure because they did too many factor analyses, like me, and they didn't pan out. Let's just say it was a dead end, of a road, and I don't recommend it. I recommend doing other things besides factor analysis, like supplementing with qualitative research, like you did. Michelle, did you have another answer for her?
I don't. I would have to look back at
Okay.
the specifics of what I wrote in the dissertation, but
yeah, you can send that to us. Let's give a round of applause to Michelle here tonight.
Thank you all.
It's great to have you with us. You can hang around for a couple minutes while you look up that video. And,
I already saved it or put it in the chat. So
you're so quick. Gosh darn. Those Illinois people, they got nothing else to do but look some stuff on the internet. That's where supercomputers come from. Everything comes from Illinois. And those of us in Indiana and Michigan, Ahmed, we don't, we had vowed all is in Illinois people. Michelle is doing great. It's in Springfield. And just if you have a chance to visit Abraham Lincoln's house and want to stop by the campus of Illinois Springfield, it was one of the first places doing blended learning, trying to have the whole campus, every course on campus be blended. That was an initiative of the president of Springfield at one point. And then he went to another university, and so that died out. But Illinois has been ambitious in many aspects of technology and education, in particular blended learning that they're known for. I'm going to move to Ahmed and say thank you again to Michelle. And Ahmed has had a successful career both here at Indiana and previously at Fort Hays State, where he got, I think, his master's degree at Indiana, his PhD in his IST. But he's now at Michigan. And so he's an experienced or learning experience designer who's at the Center for Academic Innovation at Michigan, the University of Michigan. He utilizes his expertise to create learner-centered experiences for a widely diverse audience of global learners, so he says. He's committed to rigorous design. We'll find out if it's factor analyses or not, because, Bonk didn't have too much success with factor analyses or SEM models, but he values creating robust learning experiences for a diverse and inclusive audience. I can go on and on about his commitment, but he knows a lot of people in this field because he's been in this field for quite a while, exploring and meeting people and so forth. His wife is on this paper as well, by the way, and Victoria couldn't be here tonight because she has laryngitis. And so we were hoping to have her, but Ahmed, I'm sure, will do a great job in presenting the role of design ethics and maintaining students' privacy, a call to action to learning designers in higher education. Ahmed.
Thanks, Dr. Bong. Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all. Good to meet you. It's a pleasure to spend some time with you this evening, learning, growing, and reflecting. And good to see some familiar faces and meeting some new friends. So Victoria is one of the co-authors in the paper. She sends her hello and her warm greetings to everyone, with an apologies that she couldn't make it because she truly cannot talk. She lost her voice, basically. She's better. She saw a doctor today, so things will improve. Both Victoria and I are designers, scholars, and educators by training. As Dr. Bonk said, I graduated in from IST in 2020 with a PhD in instructional system technology and a minor in human-computer interaction design. I got my master's from Grand Valley State in education technology.
Grand Valley, not Fort Hays State. Okay.
Yeah, Fort Hays State was the first university where I worked as instructional designer.
Okay.
So yeah, I worked after getting with my master's. I was heading to IU and then decided to defer for about 2 or 3 years until I figured out what I want to do with my life. And then so I practiced instructional design at Fort Hays for about 3 years, and then I headed to IU to start working my PhD.
Okay, that explains. 2020 you graduated? I can't believe it's been 4 years already. My God.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
my.
4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago.
And originally from the Middle East, Northern
I'm
Africa.
from Tunisia.
Tunisia, I was going to say, from Tunisia. So people were wondering, so why did you come to the USA? What attracted you, or did someone influence you and recommend and twist your arm, or what were the factors in that?
So in Tunisia, I major in English, and starting from my second year, I started taking these courses about teaching English as a foreign language in the TESOL pedagogy area. And that's where readings about instructional design and instructional theory start to emerge. Few little chapters I started reading were written by Charlie Regaluth at the time. And I was like, this field is amazing. I just kind of fell in love with that. Fast forward to 2010, right after I graduated with a BA in English, I got selected to come as a Fulbright visiting student at Grand Valley State. And I met Deepak Subramoni, and he helped me so Deepak is a graduate of the IST program. He is a professor at Kansas State right now, and he was a professor at Grand Valley at the time. So he managed to help me channel my passion toward all things related to EdTech and instructional design and into basically an academic and a professional career. So since then, I finished my 1 year Fulbright, and I came back to get my master's at Grand Valley, and I was working as a graduate assistant for instructional design since then. So I have an overall of 13 years of professional higher education experience in instructional design and education technology. So yeah, since then the journey started, and got my master's, went to Fort Hays, then came to IU to work my PhD. The thing that although it was exhausting and taxing at times, but I have no regrets, and I'm happy that I did that. Actually, throughout my PhD program, I did not let go of the instructional design experience. So I was working for Lisa Huber at the School of Public Health at IU as an instructional designer. And I did independent consulting as well, while also teaching for the IST program as an associate instructor.
So we've had several guests this semester who worked for Lisa Huber in the School of Public Health, including Merve Bastigan.
Absolutely, Merve, Minhee. Yep. Victoria too works for Lisa Hooper. Amaury, who is also recent graduate from our program, and student IST program. He was the associate director for Lisa Huber as well, still the director to this time. Lisa had an eye for, at least she calls, she had an eye for students in IST program who can do instructional design work with the public health faculty, and every time she finds one, she asks them to work with her unit.
Exactly.
So it was a blessing to work with Lisa. I learned a lot from her, learned a lot from practicing it, and it was super interesting to stay with the development of the fields, because I remember when I started in 2011, accessibility mandates for online learning really weren't a thing, and then they started pick up in steam in 2015 and 2016, at least from my memory. Things related to proctoring, tools for proctoring got better. A lot of technologies got better. When I started, the only conferencing system for meeting like this was maybe Skype and MSN, and then Uvo came along, and then now we have Zoom and WebEx, and all of those technologies start popping up, and things is getting better and getting worse in some ways. But this is a long way of saying that instruction, at least in my opinion, the professional practice of instructional learning design, if you cannot let it go, just gonna escape. If you take a pause from it, or you just, at least in my experience, I'm glad that I didn't take a pause from it, and to this moment, I'm still practicing designer. So yeah, that's in a nutshell about me and my background. I have a brief presentation. I'm not gonna repeat the paper. I'm gonna just safely assume everyone who's curious to know more about the paper, or probably have read the paper sooner for this class. Wonderful that we got this paper to be open access, thanks to the publishing agreement that Wiley has with the Big Ten schools. So they cover the APCs for open access, which is wonderful. The other thing I want to draw the attention is that our author's forward note is that throughout the paper, we actually refer to learning design as a profession and a discipline field of design practice, and learning designers as professionals of learning design as synonymous with instructional design and instructional designers. I don't want to get into the debate about difference between LXD or learning design and instructional design. Let's just say that for us as authors, we're saying these are synonymous. They are the same things. And I can talk more about that if needed. The paper actually fuses several philosophical and design theory perspectives. So we want for sure to clarify our positionality. Positionality that we share, I personally share with the co-authors of the paper. And those are Stephanie Moore. She's a professor of Organizational Information Learning Sciences at the University of New Mexico, also editor-in-chief for the Journal of Computer Higher Education. My love, Victoria, Dr. Victoria Brabenka-Lashev, a design scholar practitioner, also at the University of Michigan, and Dr. Colin Gray, who is also the HCID program director and professor of informatics at IU Bloomington. Go Hoosiers!
It's IU Day today, by the way.
I know, that's why I said go Hoosiers. So although it's not clearly articulated in the paper, yet one can detect it through a close examination of our knowledge claims. The positionality I share with the co-author is that first, we do not assume a moral or ethical superiority stance when we write on the topic of ethics, or when we make a call to action to learning designers in higher education. We are, however, concerned by the lack of attention to ethics in instructional learning design literature and education in general. So as scholars, we want to approach always this topic and several other topics from a scholarly, educator, and practitioner perspectives. These perspectives that we held and continue to have throughout our careers. And when we address the topic of design ethics, we're seeking a change through research to improve, not to prove. And I'm borrowing here this metaphor from Dr. Charlotte Rageruth and Dr. Peter Honebein. We do not believe that there is a magic wand in design practice. Michelle can back me up here, nor we can offer one. And what we believe, however, is that efforts could be focused on building the designer's professional character and preparing them well for their design practice. A practice we think should be treated as a discipline. We think instructional learning design is one of the design disciplines that can intersect with other design disciplines like UX design, for example. The other things that we think did a fairly good job in the paper, but want to jump on the opportunity here to clarify the definition of very few key terms. These are ethics, or design ethics by extension, learning instructional designer, and design mindset. When it comes to ethics, we want to make sure that ethics is essentially a broad space of philosophical inquiry in how we should live and what good human life should be. More specifically, design ethics are the standards and practices that guide how designers should act when they face many situations in their professional practice. And it's important to distinguish ethics from morality. So ethics is not morality, although these terms are often used synonymously or interchangeably. Morality is the strict adherence to social rules and norms that aim to compel public behavior. An example with that would requiring student to turn on their webcams during an online class meeting to mirror classroom settings where everyone can see everyone. That's morally acceptable, yet ethically questionable. Ethics is not a science. Science does not tell us what we should do, as what could be scientifically possible could be unethical. An example with that would be the use of algorithms to detect and analyze hand gestures on camera and transcribe them into emojis. Let's put that into a test. I think this should work. Thus, having capacity to detect and analyze everything on camera, including all body movements, facial expression, and what's on the background. That's all scientifically now possible. Ethically, should we do that? That's the question. Ethics also is not same as law or religion. Laws and religions people practices can be distant from what is ethical, despite the fact that these two could be good sources and places for ethical behaviors. For example, a law could be ethically corrupt when it reduces power for an online technology company, I'm not going to name which one, allowing them to harvest student data and sell them for profit. Also, many people do not subscribe to a specific religion, yet they act ethically, and vice versa as well. So it might be helpful to think of ethics as a process of reflection, critical questioning, justification, augmentation, and application of morals, laws, and values. Therefore, it's also helpful to think of design ethics as a form of reflective practice, like Donald Schoen's reflection and action, that designers engage in rather than a set of rules or boxes to check and just move on. As for learning and instructional design or learning designer, which is the second key term in the paper, we want to make sure that the definition is that learning design, as we said, is a discipline. Therefore, learning instructional design is essentially a trained professional who can design for learning in diverse contexts, applying the rigorous training with an ethical and rigorous agency. For me, learning design is not a technician of tools and techniques. In higher education, I like to think of an instructional or learning designer as a non-faculty educator who has an equally important role to the faculty educator. So therefore, this is a profession who holds identity of a designer and an educator, and why not a scholar as well. Joshua Kim, he's a well-famous scholar practitioner, writes a lot in higher ed. Dr. Bog, I think, is a fan of Joshua Kim. I get to know about Joshua Kim writing because Dr. Bog shared articles written by Joshua Kim. So he once contemplated the question of who should be hired for the instructional designer role. And he said, of course, you hire the instructional designer who has been trained to be an instructional designer. He has this famous article saying a traditional PhD does not make an instructional designer. So a professional with training in the science of learning, an expert on a theoretical framework and research-validated method for course design, and someone who has been immersed in the literature on learning, a devotee of Sorum, and a skeptic of the efficacy of digital learning technologies, but a skepticism born out of deep expertise with the operation of the technology and exposure to the data of their effectiveness. If anyone would like to know an example of how it looks like, a skepticism born out of deep expertise with the operational of technology, of technology and exposure to the data and their effectiveness, Michelle's talk is a great example of that expertise, where Michelle obviously showcased skepticism, expertise with the operation of the technologies, a proctoring tool, but also with an exposure to the data on the effectiveness of these tools. Last thing that we touch upon in the paper is the idea of the design mindset and what we mean by that. We have written, Elizabeth Bolling and I have written extensively on this topic, and I'm going to share that reference at the end of the day. At the end of my talk, the mindset entails essentially that learning designers is not different from other professional designers, thinking of themselves as a designer equal to other designers in respective design disciplines such as architecture and engineering, and they are willingly embracing professional identity of designer. So this mindset also entails treating their contribution to every design project as instrumental and important, Thus, they're working from like an agency-oriented position, being the guarantor of design, which is a term that Nelson Storman have put forward. Finally, the idea of designer or design mindset, the designer rely on a distinct form of reasoning, such as abduction 1, abduction 2, and framing. This is a foundation of the ethically oriented, rigorous designer. Before actually using ethical framework and tools, we're thinking of a designer who can challenge ideas and assumptions regarding technology integration in general and detect these problems and then confront ethical dilemmas in their design work. Very briefly, and we actually commented on this in the paper, why we are concerned about the state of ethics in learning, design, instruction, this technology, because when we look at ethics in other domains of design, like architecture and engineering, we found this work, a lot of work have been done by Henry Petrosky, for example, on design failure, who I use his work in my dissertation at IU. We go to IEEE, we found this major publication that talk about design justice, design ethics, design responsibility. In the sense that we find design ethics in engineering this well-bloomed tree that has been planted for a while and continues to be nurtured, whereas ethics in ID is like the small plant that needs much more time to work and grow. Luckily, things have been getting better, so the future is better, I hope. Several scholars have already invested efforts in this area. Stephanie Moore is one of them, and we started, working on this book chapters, papers, articles, trying to improve things for ACT. The core aspect of the paper is that we share a practical designery tool for ethics by the Marcola Center for Applied Ethics, and we share 2 vignettes that talk about technology integration. One involves proctoring, actually. No, not proctoring, involves using a tool for synchronous sessions, and the tool has an AI engine that can analyze students' behavior on camera and show whether students are focused or not. And the other one is about dark pattern. And this is where Colin Gray was very helpful. So we share these 2 vignettes, and then it was like, here's the vignettes, here are the scenarios, here's how we can run them through the framework to make an ethical decisions. The essence of this framework is essentially 6 lenses. First is the right lens, second is the justice lens, third is the utilitarian lens, fourth is the common good lens, fourth is the virtue lens, and lastly is the care lens. So each of these lenses allow us to look at ethical situation from one perspective, and help us determine the standard of behavior in our design practice to be considered right and good. Yet there are still problems to be solved. We have to acknowledge that we as a human being and scholars and intellectual, whatever, we have no wide consensus on the content of these specific lenses. For example, we don't agree on the same set of human and civil rights as we can see nowadays in policies and politics. We may not agree on what could be the common good. Take, for example, the notion of student loan forgiveness. A lot of disagreement on that. Heck, we may not agree on what is good and what is harm. Also, the different lenses may lead to different answers to the question, what is ethical? So, but the good thing is that each of these lenses give us important insight into the process, regarding which allow us to decide what is ethical and what is in particular circumstances. So we explain all these lenses in the paper in deep detail, and we found them to be very helpful. Then we move to the practical part of running an ethical situation through basically a 5-step process. First, you identify or recognize the ethical issue through asking questions. Then you move to get the facts, also through specific prompts and question. After that, you evaluate what we call the alternative actions. Then fourth, you make a decision and test it. And then you conclude by acting and reflecting. And we demonstrated that again through 2 scenarios and vignettes in the paper. So throughout the paper, we tried to basically answer the foundational question, how learning designers can leverage design ethics. And the answer to that question is not simple. but at least we attempted it. And we think that learning designer can leverage design ethics by first attaining a rigorous training for learning design practice, a training equally rigorous to the other trainings of respected design professions, such as architecture and engineering. Then they should subscribe to and operate within a design mindset, a mindset of rigor, ethical orientation, and thinking of themselves as the true guarantors of design, powerful agents of change. And last and not least, designer can leverage design ethics by intentionally using ethical design method and strong design judgment, as we have demonstrated in the paper, using that practical framework by the Marcola Center for Applied Ethics. This whole paper and this whole scholarship and the intellectual thoughts behind it really fits within a goal. Now I'm going to use the personal pronoun I because I have a goal. And my co-authors actually share some of my aspirations. And the goal is actually simple in its premise, yet I think it's ambitious and hard to achieve, but I think it's still within my reach. Maybe I'll live to the day when I see that I achieve that goal. Maybe I will not. But for now, I'm dedicating all my professional efforts toward achieving that goal. And the goal is to elevate the status of the instructional / learning design profession. I want it to be well-established and respected design profession. This is a profession that I deeply care about. I earned the right to say a few words in its defense and to criticize it also. That's because I dedicated a significant portion of my adult life to it. And the signs that will tell me that I achieved that goal is that when I see only those who received a validated and rigorous training can practice the profession, that when one holds, they don't get the infamous question of, so tell me again, what do you do for work? How you do that? Or what's that? What's instructional design? And then a profession that is equally rigorous to other well-established design professions. So when the learning designer, instructional designer stamps the plans on the blueprint, that's it. It's done. The same designer can bring the whole development phase to a halt, saying, that's not what I designed. This is not going to work. This is why when I started my scholarship journey a decade ago, I focused my research efforts on design tools. Only then I arrived to study design failure and design judgment, which was the topic of my dissertation. And after that, I arrived to design ethics. I wish I can be cool and say, oh, I started designing design ethics because I had a revelation or some sort of prophecy. No, it didn't. I get to it after a series of studies approach. So these efforts, which combine education, research, and practitioner perspective, will allow me to reach my goal one research problem at a time, hopefully, with or without funding. We'll see about that. That's because I believe in this. I believe to be a designer is therefore to be the co-creator of a new world. It's a calling of enormous responsibility with a concomitant accountability. This is true even if each individual designer is only involved in a very small design act, playing merely a minor part in the totality of the redesign of an emerging new reality. Our individual designs will always be contributing causes to an overall composition that is an emergent new world. I hope the ideas introduced to you today help you continue to be an ethically driven and rigorous designer, a co-creator of a new world. Thank you so much. And here's the goodie bag. I'm going to put this link here in the chat.
So I want to comment on a couple things before we open up for questions. You mentioned my friend Joshua Kim from Inside Higher Education. So if you read Inside Higher Education, usually he has a blog post. It's an article, really. It's towards the end, usually in there. And he has written a number of pieces on what an instructional designer is, jobs for instructional designers. If you took R511 with me, you may have read him. Actually, in the old syllabus, the old monster syllabus for this class, I no longer have the monster syllabus, but he'll see Joshua Kim in there. He's a Dartmouth person, administrators. He's at Dartmouth in New Hampshire, just to mention that. Heather Tilburg Webb, you've mentioned, with Stephanie Moore, has a book on ethics. Is it Ethics of Instructional Design?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a new book. And Stephanie's she's the editor of Journal of Computing in Higher Education, and she's also at New Mexico. And Heather's an old friend out east, like at Boston College. She was at one point. I forget where she is now.
Heather and Stephanie and I also have an open access book chapter called Professional Ethics for LIDT as a Reflection, Interrogation, and Design.
Where is she at now, Heather? What university? Is it Boston College?
I think so, yeah. She's still at her university, yeah.
Okay. And you also mentioned Stolterman, Eric Stolterman. Stolterman teaches for IU. You know, maybe you could, could take him. He's human-computer interaction in the School of Informatics now.
He was my minor advisor.
He's a great person. He's
Absolutely,
got great books on design principles. So, and Mena Ju and I and Merve Bastigan have a paper on design principles for teaching School of Public Health students that's published a couple of years ago in Contemporary Ed Tech. It's not a real high-level journal, but if anyone wants to read that, I'm happy to send it. He also mentioned Elizabeth Bowling, who was the chair of our department, IST. She's still in IST. So you've mentioned a lot of really good people, but one person you mentioned quickly, Ahmed, was Michelle, and then you mentioned her last name too quickly. Who is the Michelle, and could you type her name in the chat window for us?
Michelle, who was presenting before me.
Oh, before you, Gribbins.
Gribbins, yeah.
Okay, I didn't hear I thought you mentioned something else. Okay.
No. I was talking about Michelle, her presentation about her research regarding proctoring, and the perspective she brought forward in research was amazing.
Yes, she is amazing. Yeah. You're amazing too, Ahmed. Med, when he came to my P540 course on learning theories, he knew all the theories, and before he even walked in, I was going, what can I teach this guy? So what I did, I used pink time learning in the class where Google gives people 4 days you have to work, and the 5th day you can do whatever you want. So I told the students you can do 75% of the work, and 25% you can do whatever you want. And I know you took advantage of that, but you did do a great job in that class. And I think he actually taught one of the lectures in that class, because he knew he had met one of the theorists out there somehow, amazingly. So Ahmed's got a rich knowledge base, as you can see here, and rich training coming from Indiana. He's read Charlie Rayluth before coming here. Then he studied with Charlie and others when he was at Indiana. Charlie had kind of retired, but you met him and he worked with him a bit, and many others. So questions for Ahmed? Comments, questions? Anybody can jump in.
I was just going to make a comment. This your topic that you presented on here tonight, Ahmed, really reminded me. Earlier in the semester, we had the opportunity to talk with Robert Cosma, and I ended up getting his book, "Make the World a Better Place." And it was very interesting for me just to think about, when he was sharing that, and then some of the things that I've read in the book about how design is very pervasive in every area of our lives, in society in general. And you're 100% correct. It's our job to ensure that we're doing that in an ethically, in a morally sound manner as well. So I appreciate that. That was just a nice connection between those two topics there.
Yeah. Thanks, Bo. Yeah, we actually cited Robert Cosma book in our paper. He's a respectful voice into the idea of design responsibility. I'm a big fan of Eric Solomon work. The thing that I like about Eric Solomon and Hannah Dunsel book, The Design Way, they're the first one to call basically design as the oldest human tradition. They started with this book with this broad statement. They say, Genesis is ongoing. Humans did not discover fire, they designed it. Design is the oldest human tradition. So they call basically design is the oldest human tradition before we come up with other human traditions such as language, arts, politics, technology, etc., etc. Indeed, if we think of design in a very broad sense of making something with an intentional goal in order to achieve a specific state, everything around us is a design, including food, how you put together a dish. Yeah.
So Cosmo was a guest in here, and he was an alum of Wayne State up near you, and also was a professor at Michigan, where you are now. It's a small world, as it is. Anyone else want to make a comment or a question?
I can make both comment and question. And so first, congratulations on your outstanding achievements in academic research. It's amazing, like, and I'm quite interested in the keywords in your speech title, that is students' privacy. Because as a teacher, I also meet this problem. Always say it's challenging. And how do you think that the remote and hybrid learning innovations affect students' privacy, especially since COVID? And what can be done by teachers to respond to meet these new challenges? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very interesting questions. What we were very articulate and clear about in the paper, specifically through the vignettes, is that well-intentioned efforts by teachers, by educators to integrate technology into the learning experience ends up actually harming the students, harming them from perspective of privacy. And we listed that through two examples. Just because, at least in the examples we mentioned, we illustrated how these technologies are not innocent. They are actually, they have a commercial goal behind them by these companies, such as either harvesting student data and training their AI engines to make them better and better and better, or nudging the students, the learners, to buy books, buy things online, and send targeting advertisement for them, essentially through very deliberate approach of, we call it dark patterns. It's a well-intentioned design in the website that nudges the student to pay. Our recommendations in the paper and what we illustrated well is that the process of designing a learning experience, now that we have well-established enterprise called designing learning experiences in a professional context, like with professional instructional designers, now that we have established these enterprises and we have this discipline, it's mandatory first from an ethical standpoint for educators not to work alone on this. They have to work with instructional designers. And this is why we say, here's your call to action to instructional designer. You have a responsibility in this. We refuse, at least for me, I refuse to hear instructional design like, oh, it's not my problem. The faculty wanted that. No, we want to refuse that. We're going to say, you have a responsibility. You have to stand in front of this. You have to bring in other resources from the university that problematize the issue and bring your concerns forward, your ethical concerns forward, even if there is no policy in the university about it. So not working alone, work in collaboration with others. Think of these moments of risk, privacy, security, failure, etc., in explicit manner, bring them to the foreground as you're making decisions, as you're working with people, would be the first two things I advise teachers and educators to do.
Thanks for your insights. Actually, it's not only students' privacy, but also teachers' privacy, I think so.
Yeah.
Edward, did you start in 2015 or was it 16? It was 15.
I started my PhD at IU 2015 in August.
Yeah, that's what I thought. As I taught P540 learning theories.
I took, that was my first class in the PhD program, was P540 with Dr. Bonk.
Been a while we've known each other, almost a decade, not quite.
Almost a decade, I know. And it feels like yesterday. I mean, I still have the archive of the papers. I still remember all what we learned about connectivism. Yeah, it feels like yesterday.
So that's what I was going to say. I had to come up with a lecture on connectivism, which you didn't know. So I did do that in that class. They don't let me teach that class. They've remodeled that class a bit, but maybe someday that was my class. But oh well, things move on. Anyone else have a comment or a question before we go to Stephanie?
There's a question from Jennifer in the chat. It
Yeah,
says,
Jennifer, go ahead and jump in here, Jennifer.
Yeah, well, if I understood what you were saying a moment ago, you were saying, teachers should not go off on their own to integrate this technology to the designer. But do you think that instructional designers are being adequately prepared to make those evaluations? And I say this as a relatively new master's student.
It depends what the instructional designers are trained. I have seen in many programs in many areas, instructional designers have trained on these areas of technology integration since they are master's students. This conversation brought to them. I can speak about at least my own training instructional designer at 2 universities, Grand Valley State and IU. These conversations have been there. It was part of my training to look and evaluate the tools from different perspectives, including privacy, things related to copyright too as well. So yeah, our field also has a lot of self-proclaimed instructional designers or instructional designers who hold the title of instructional designer, but they have no formal or rigorous training in instructional design. Is it fair to measure them against an expectation that I think they should be adhered to? No, but it's fair to do that at least for the one who went through rigorous and formal training. So the lack of training to do that, yeah, there's gonna be a cost for that. There's always a cost for cutting corners. Overall, are we paying enough attention to it? No. Should we pay more attention to it? Yes. Is it mature enough? No. Does it need more work like other design disciplines? Yes. This is where I like one of the things that I learned from Deepak is that our field only recently started to become dangerous. And because of COVID, now it's becoming more and more dangerous. So as we become more dangerous and more powerful in affecting change in education, we're going to have to talk about this and be like, whoa, wait. So very soon, I think we're going to get to the point where we're going to establish what we call like a licensing system where only those who are credentialed and trained and licensed to practice instructional design could do that. And I'm going to be in support of that, to be honest with you.
That is an interesting perspective and is definitely a contribution you made to this class tonight, because you get us to think about the professionalization of this field. There's a revolution that's happening in Ahmed's mind. He wants this revolution to happen in more minds than just his, you see. And that's his goal.
At least I shared my goal. I wasn't hiding my goal. I was clear and honest. I'm like, here's what I want to achieve. I don't have a secret agenda. I have a public agenda.
Sumin has joined us from Korea recently, and she's working with some of the foremost scholars at Seoul National University who are also trying to professionalize this field a bit. She hasn't dissertated yet. She's working on that. Sumin, do you have a comment before Ahmed goes? I saw you smiling earlier.
No, not just thank you for providing a detailed explanation of the terms. And I had never thought about the ethical problem, the learning designer. So throughout your presentation, I can consider and how can I do after. So thank you.
Okay. So we'll end with that kind comment from Sumin for Ahmed, and all of us need to give him a round of applause for coming in tonight and not having laryngitis like his wife has tonight. I appreciate you, and you're never one at a loss for words. So I was really worried if you caught laryngitis as well. I don't know if it's catchable or anything, but I don't think it is. Wish Victoria well, and I am recording this. I will send you the link afterwards. And so you'll be in the playlist for this semester. They've already got the playlist, but I'm adding weeks 14 and 15 to that. This is week 14. So anyone else want to say a final thank you? Jump in. You want to jump in here? Put it in the chat window if you want to. And again, let's give them one more round of applause. And thank you for, I will try and visit you in Ann Arbor. I love that place. We're going to move back to Stephanie who presented earlier, Stephanie Blackman, is an expert in technology integration in higher ed and professional development. Her interests include experiential learning, interdisciplinary teams, privacy and security and technology. She's interested in how mobile apps and any internet connected devices such as wearable, mobile, and in-home technologies, and the issues of trust and privacy and security wrapped around them. She's also done some research related to my big area, and that's massive open online courses, or MOOCs, and students' experiences with those MOOCs and with learning management systems in general. Jill, she's interested in virtual worlds just like you are. So you two have some commonalities. And some of you are kind of interested in experiences of people with disabilities and these internet connected devices and issues of trust. So you can, as you can see, this is just, I just started a partial reading of her bio here. And this special issue that she put together starts with an article. So the special issue is Balancing Student Privacy and Technology Integration in Higher Ed. And I saw Alex has joined us. He has a piece in this special issue. Engagement, encroachment, and interstitial spaces. I didn't pronounce that right. Her piece to open the whole issue is called Inclusion or Infringement, a systematic research review of student perspectives on student privacy in technology-enhanced, hybrid online courses. So I'm not sure if I did justice to all that you contributed to this issue, your heart and soul's in this issue, your eyes, your mind, your ears, every piece of your body went to this special issue. You probably lacked sleep for a couple of those nights in August of 2023 when we were putting this all together, and the reviewers kept coming back with more to change, but you did it, you pulled us all together, you made a great special issue. I know Alex will applaud you as well for all the work you did. So I'm not sure what exactly you're going to present for us in part 3 of this, or actually part 4, because you're at the beginning, and Alex will have part 5, the last part. So Stephanie, you want to tell us what you're going to talk about and take over?
Yeah, so thank you for the introduction. And I just thought, since you all have engaged with the issue and you've engaged with each of the papers in the issue, that I would just open it up for a conversation. I will give a general overview of the things, of course, that we covered in the paper, just some refreshers about how we went through the processes and everything, but really just wanted to open it up for a conversation about some of the things that we found in the paper and other questions and conversations related to privacy, student privacy in higher education. So as Kurt mentioned, the title is Inclusion or Infringement. It's a systematic review of students' perspectives on student privacy and technology enhanced hybrid and online courses. And I will start there because originally it was going to focus on online courses specifically. What I found as I kept going through the literature, and I will talk more about all of that literature in a bit, as I found as I was going through that those all started coming up together. So it felt like it would be a much more comprehensive piece if we just included all of those areas together to really give people a robust sense of what the conversation has been about student privacy for the last 20 years. So we started from 2003 and worked our way up to 2023. And then the piece came out, of course, later in 2023.
So, might want to do is have everybody who's here put in the chat window one issue that you're concerned about in student privacy, and then allow someone to read those issues. I mean, we all have concerns about student privacy and use of data, and they're prominent in the Chronicle of Higher Ed. They're prominent in Inside Higher Ed. They're prominent in the Guardian or whatever we read. We're reading about this all the time. It's only increasing. So I think we should just spend a minute here just typing something in the chat window to everyone. Just share with everyone in this meeting what privacy issues are you concerned with, or are top of mind, or your university or your institution or your organization. What has come up recently in terms of student privacy or privacy issues, and particularly with the use of technology embedded in them. And so that might be a way to springboard or get us to see what you all think are important. I know Risa has not asked a question yet tonight. He always has interesting questions that he's posing related to topics like this. There are many of you who have not yet asked a question tonight. I think we need to start with people who haven't asked a question yet, including Vanessa's joined us here. Young has joined us. So, and maybe we start with Ahmed with a question. That might be a great, oh, he just left us. Oh, there he's right there. He jumped in a new window. Since you're going to be probably popping out soon, Ahmed, do you want to pose a concern or a student privacy question to Stephanie to start this conversation off as a handoff, the baton from you to her?
I think it's on everybody's mind, and it's 2 words. It's called AI, artificial intelligence. It's undoubtedly something that, like many other things that human beings have invented, could go either way, and probably is going to go both ways at the same time. We'll see which direction will go would be better. But essentially, I'm concerned about AI models that feeds on data, specifically student data. I'm concerned about these models are not respecting the boundaries of the transactional process between the educational institution and the student, which is the act of teaching and learning. And these AI models are going beyond that and looking at other things that the students are doing, that the students are completing on their laptops and their computers, even though if they are school-issued laptop. We're talking about K-12. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the idea of consent and parental consent. I'm concerned about the idea of well-educated consent and what that means. The idea of also technology literacy, and basically people make it educated and well-informed choices before opting in or before signing and pressing a button that said, I've read and I agree the terms and conditions.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that AI was a concern because, again, we looked at 20 years of data. So AI was a concern before. And it's interesting that while those concerns were coming up in the literature, there wasn't a moment to say, oh gosh, what do we think the future of this could be? What, how do we think this is going to look down the road? And maybe if we had, we'd have a better kind of framework for addressing some of the things that are coming up now, because the work with generative AI, the work that's happening with sentient AI, right? Those things did not just appear. You don't just get a chat GPT overnight, right? You have a GPT that comes before the chat GPT. So that these kinds of things have been happening, but I don't know if the conversations have been at the forefront. Now, interestingly, what we found across a number of different types of technologies, and several come up in the literature, is that students will make compromises, what they consider to be compromises, in order to get access to certain things. Now, we not only found that in this data, I, as lead on another project a few years ago about trust and privacy and inclusion and security and all of that in the disability community, we found a similar thing there, where there were compromises that people were willing to make with the technology if they felt that there was a very specific necessary thing they were getting from it. I think the larger question is, should that have to be the case, right? So now for our paper in particular, we had, we conducted a systematic review using Prisma. So we had very specific guidelines we were looking at regarding how a study got included in the work. One of those was that the data come directly from students. So we weren't going to use pieces that talked about what students might think. We were only going to engage with work that focused squarely on either qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods data from students, and some aspect of privacy, even if the study itself was not about privacy, because those still are quite challenging to find, ones that focus just on privacy alone. You can find that with the data analytics components a little, but with these other kinds of technologies that are introduced, it was kind of hit or miss when it came to a focus specifically on privacy. So even if a study focused on something else, but talked about privacy tangentially, we included it there as well. So we, in thinking about the things that you mentioned, Amit, right? Like these concerns about what AI can do, but also these other kinds of concerns about consent and what educated consent looks like. Sometimes students are not aware of how the technology is being employed in the first place. They think that something helpful is happening, and perhaps, right? But once you start to think about what it means to give that data over, and that you're not just giving it to the system, you're giving it to the person who owns the system, you're giving it according to terms and conditions for a particular technology anyway, you're also giving it to the partners of that organization who may or may not be named in the terms and conditions, who may or may not be named in the privacy policy. So there are all of these components that are there. And what we found in the literature was that there were times students were willing to make that compromise. They talked about two-factor authentication as one of those, right? Giving a phone number or something in order to engage with a system. Most of the students who talked about that felt very comfortable with that, but were very concerned at the same time about not having enough information about what happens to their data, not having enough information about what happens with the information, who gets to see it, why it's being collected. So even though you don't have this huge push necessarily to address these privacy issues, that's growing, especially with now AI being on more people's radars. Even though you have, you don't have that big push, you do have within the literature 20 years of documented concerns that students have about some of these technologies, but also ways in which they think that these concerns can be mitigated. So they'll give suggestions like, well, can you just tell me when you're going to use it for this? Or, I want to be able to opt into this as opposed to opting out of it, those kinds of things. So we did find quite a bit of that throughout the literature across the technologies, and we looked at quite a few.
Okay.
So I'm looking in the chat here.
So Vanessa has the next one up, and then we'll go to Xiaojing. We got a lot of questions. Bo, Jennifer. So Vanessa, jump in here.
Yes, I put in the chat. I was just thinking that I don't know too much about this area of focus, but the first thing that's coming to mind is to what extent are students invading their own privacy, knowingly, unknowingly, and just the consequences of that.
So we found that in some instances, students are somewhat aware of what's happening with their data. So we had synthesized the data and came up with 3 areas, and they were privacy comforts, privacy concerns, and privacy compromises. And as you would imagine, in the privacy compromises space, that's where students were saying, well, I know that this is happening, but I'm not that worried about it. I know that this is going on, but I really want to have this benefit that the technology brings, so I'm not going to really think about it too much. There were instances, though, where students were not very aware, and you find that mostly in the data analytics literature, where students just were not sure about all of the things that were happening. If you look back at much earlier data, though, and I quote this article from Shun all the time, it's from 2012. And that was a part of what we referenced when we were talking about the discussion and what was happening across this 20 years of data, that people are engaging with this data in ways that students may not realize, such as, deciding what courses somebody can sign up for next, or making advising determinations whether it's the courses or whether it's something else that a student might need, determining whether or not a student is, quote, at risk or not. So all of those, those are implications for the integration of this technology, and students may not know that it's being used in that way. As a matter of fact, they don't know that the data perhaps has been collected, but that's where there's ambiguity about the data use, right? So even if you're saying to students, here is what we are collecting, there is that other component of, well, how is it being used? And so some of that comes up across that 20-year span of literature as well. So sometimes they know, but a lot of times they don't.
Thank you.
Xiaojing. Xiaojing runs the center here on technology for language learning in the largest classroom building on campus, Ballantyne Hall. She's an alum of IST. Xiaojing.
Thank you. Well, I guess my question is more dramatic or extreme. So I was like, even thinking about,
when these were extreme, even more extreme.
The possibility of, even negating the concept of exam, like the recent trend of gradeless classrooms, which, where educators try not to give students grade at all, and just they focus on their learning. I know this is like really extreme to discuss this now because there are all kinds of exams there and they're still necessary. It's just like for the ISTers, we're more thinking forward. So thinking of that, I was just thinking that question, the student privacy question, may not be even relevant. So this is really a very extreme statement, but at the same time, the process of learning. So learning, the collecting learning analytics is still even more important because I think Lena and also Joe was talking about the process of learning, and we're also collecting that kind of information. But I think that question was addressed just now. We're talking about how to collect and how students are notified for how their data are being collected and used. That was helpful. Thank you. I'm not sure if this is even a question. Yeah, and to add that is another factor is AI. I think generative AI further really force educators to think about what's the format of exam or what's the difference between exam and assessment, because what we really focused on is just to make sure that the students learn and not to make sure that they took the exam and in the way we want.
No, absolutely. I think, and to your point about what assessment actually is, generative AI definitely had people going back and rethinking how they were testing, assessing.
So we're going to go to Bo up there in the corner of my screen where Hollywood Squares here. I got all the cubes. Bo?
Yeah.
Bo's my TA, by the way, just so you
I have to frame this a little bit differently as well, because my background was elementary education. And so I taught for a number of years. And one of the things that I always did was I would always take pictures throughout the course of the year. And then at the end of the year, I would tag my students in Google Photos, and I would collect all of the individual students' pictures and put it into a shared folder for their parents to take home at the end of the year. While my intentions were really good, I never truly considered the ethical implications of putting, their images out there online, and now, they're completely available. I'm assuming the majority of them probably are on some form of social media platform anyhow, but what would you say to educators that would be in that situation where maybe I would call it an ignorance. They're ethically ignorant in this situation. What would you how would you try and coach them up on that, and trying to just be aware of the potential issues with allowing things like that to be put online right now?
So our work focused specifically on higher education settings, but what you bring up obviously can can cross the board, right? From K-12, which was the situation you had, into higher education. And what I always start with is agency, right? Who has agency in a situation? And if you're determining what help is, then there should be some agency there for the person who is being helped to indicate whether or not it is help, right? So here's what I mean. If I think, oh gosh, it's going to be really helpful if I do this, that, or the other, I have the benefit of being able to reach out to my students and say, hey, I was thinking about, I'll give an example that I just did the other week. I was thinking about doing a practice session. If you think this would be helpful to you, let me know and we can get something on the calendar, right? Because if I say just to myself, they need a practice session, this is going to be really helpful, and I said it, when in actuality, they don't think that would be helpful, they actually think a different thing would be helpful, then I'm not really helping them in a way that I could. So if I think that I want to have something at the end of the course that's going to be a great memory for the kids and for the parents to have, then I can include them on that. Here's what I'm thinking about doing. How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts on that, right? So that people have some agency, so that the help really is help, so that the support really is support. And it's not that when we do these things, we're not, obviously we are trying to be helpful, we are trying to be supportive, but for me, that agency piece is always at the center of help, because it isn't really help unless I know from you that it's help, unless I know from you that it's support. And I take the same kind of approach with technology. I actually did a talk on person-centered technology before, because I do think about it in that way, that where you can engage with people, do that, and you're likely to have something that's a lot more inclusive and a lot more beneficial because you've heard from them that it would be.
Sounds good. We have two more people with questions, I think, and then we need to move to Alex. Maybe we can get a third point. Jennifer, want to jump in here?
I don't even really know where to jump in. I have a lot of comments.
Yeah, I saw all of them, but we only have time for one or two at the moment.
I guess my biggest concern going into the field professionally is how to even stay on top of it, manage it, because I don't feel like I've had enough training in this area to make these sorts of decisions. I have trouble just in my personal life deciding whether to accept the terms and conditions of all the different software out there and apps, and you know, can take ages to read through all that fine print. And then even if I don't like it, I have to sit there and decide, okay, do I want to use this tool? No, I don't really want to agree to this, but I can't move forward until I do. So I guess, what is your advice on that front? Just for someone entering the field and trying to come up to speed on all of this.
So I am not going to, just like I didn't sugarcoat with the challenge of pulling together a special issue, even though it's really wonderful and meaningful, I'm not going to sugarcoat this either. That is difficult. It is, and I've written about, and I think I mentioned it in this piece and several other pieces that I've written, that the fact that this content is in legalese is, it feels like it's intentionally designed to keep you from engaging with it. Now, I'm not going to accuse anybody of anything, right? I'm just going to say that it gives that impression. So the advice that I have given before, and I've written about this and done videos about it and everything, the advice that I give when it comes to incorporating the technology in a higher education space is that for everything that you want to integrate, you understand what the implications of it are for students. And the comparison that I give, it's in a piece that I wrote for Change about the student privacy and data literacy and educational opportunity. And the example that I give is that I liken it to IRB, right? People went through time years and years ago saying, we really need this data, we really need to know this thing, I've got to do it now. And what happened was people's rights as human beings were completely trampled over, not to mention other kinds of just, all kinds of rights. And so we said, uh-oh, that's not how we want to move forward. So let's create a system for asking ourselves questions. Let's vet some things. Let's work through some things. So we were able to do it successfully then for things that we really, really need. And we should be able to do that now. For every technology that we want to integrate, it's important that we know what it is. And it's important that we be able to explain to the people who need to use it, who have to use it, that we can explain what it is for them as well, that we understand the privacy implications, right? So then you can, that teaches you something in the process. So do you really need this? Do you really have to integrate this? Is there a way to do it? Because if it's too burdensome for us to go through to understand what it is, then maybe it's too burdensome to implement. But if we do think it's valuable, then if we do think it's useful, then what is also valuable and useful is to understand what it is, what it's doing, to explain that to other people who need to use it, to give them the opportunity to say, I'm uncomfortable, to give them the opportunity to say, I'm a little bit worried about this. Is there a different way to do this? And I say this, having done this myself, having engaged with things where I read the terms and conditions and had to send someone an email and say, okay, did you see that part where it said that it belongs to them, but if they do something with it, that's illegal, that it falls on me? I don't want to do that. And we had to come up with a workaround. So I think that that's a start, right? Thinking about what we're asking of other people when we integrate technology into the classroom, and then helping people to understand what that is. And by doing that in some small way, we're making a bit of progress related to the privacy. Now, that does not take away from the responsibility that organizations have. It doesn't take away from the responsibility that companies have to make this information clearer, because it does put people in a very unfair situation when we have this web-based culture and people are grabbing data every which way, and you have to hire an attorney just to go through a couple of web pages for things. That isn't, there has to be a better way than that. So that certainly doesn't take away, and I want to be really clear about that, from the responsibility that higher education institutions, the responsibility that companies who make these technologies, their responsibility. But I think in some little way, our part can be just thinking more deeply about what we're asking people to do, and then explaining that to them and giving them options.
Okay, Jennifer?
Yes, thank you.
So, Bo, I'm going to call this the Christine Greenhow effect. Last semester, Bo was with me. We did learning environment design, and Christine Greenhow gave an answer like that. And I warned all my students, I said, please don't transfer from Indiana University to Michigan State. So I'm going to warn, please don't transfer from Indiana to go to William and Mary and study with Stephanie. She's fantastic, but please stay as a student in our program. Bo was there. He knows. She gave such a cogent answer and enlightened all of us, just like you just did. We have time for Jill I'm sorry for Alex, just one more question, Alex, before you're on. Jill is my visiting scholar from Taiwan, and she wrote something on the side here a long time ago. I didn't give her a chance to ask it. In a short way, Jill, what is your question?
Okay, my question could be a reflection as well, because when I think about privacy, especially learners' privacy, I would think from my experience as a student, because I'm the student who depends heavily on self-directed learning. I really want to learn and like to learn by myself without my teacher monitoring or observing my learning progress. So that's the reason why when Dr. Bong, I was developing the so-called algorithm-driven dashboard, because I think it's a tool that can help my student to learn by themselves, because they don't have to be monitored. They just can track their own learning process in my dashboard. But after reading all the feedback here in class, in this class, I suddenly realized this kind of breaking the privacy of students or learners, or even broader audience, because I need to collect the so-called big data, a lot of big data to build on my algorithm-driven dashboard. So it's kind of a coin of two sides, right? Yeah. So
Absolutely.
it's kind of I'm not sure it's a question of reflection.
I think you'll find that
Thank you.
yeah, I think you'll find that learners have a lot to offer regarding how they think about their own privacy. I just finished up work with an undergraduate student here where we conducted research on privacy and surveyed several students and from all kinds of places and got feedback from them about privacy. And some of them were not very concerned about it. And then they went, oh, just not that worried about it, which I think is a valid perspective to hold. It is I always say it is absolutely valid to say you do not care. You're going to click through and use that website, end of story, right? It is equally valid, though, to say, wow, I'm really uncomfortable with this. What's the alternative? So I think that when we engage people more and allow them to think critically about their own processes, about their own data, about what they would like to do and how they would like to do it, as long as we're meeting the goals, right? So I think that if we give learners that opportunity, we can actually come up with some really incredible privacy mitigating solutions.
Excellent answer. Does anyone have a final comment to say goodbye to Stephanie? I don't know how long she'll stick around here, but anyone want to jump in and just say thank you?
Thank you.
Thank you, Bo. We should give her a nice round of applause for coming twice tonight to our class and raising the level of intellectual discourse up higher and higher. So a big round of applause for Stephanie tonight. And all of you should visit William and Mary and have a chat with her. Go to tea or coffee at the local, then take a tour of the people who reenact Williamsburg in the 1700s, or when was it, 1600s? It's amazing.
Williamsburg is a very lovely town, and feel free to email me. Thanks for having me, Kurt. Thanks everybody for being here. It was wonderful talking with you. As Kurt said, feel free to reach out. I like talking about tech and privacy and all of that, so I'm happy to do that.
How about everybody in the world is open sign for her? 1, 2, 3, world is open. Thank you very much. We got you. I hope to do the book, The World's Wide Open, someday and talk to your students about it. So thank you very much. This is fabulous to have the editor of the issue that we're reading this week. This does not happen often. It should happen more often. And have people like Alex come with it and Michelle come here and Ahmed come, who contributed to that special issue even better. So I am going to clap one more time and transition to Alex, who's been waiting patiently in the wings as the cleanup batter tonight, an old baseball analogy. But Alex has got an interesting LinkedIn page because he's an associate professor at the University of Albany at SUNY, but it says underneath there, Dalton, Georgia. So is he in Georgia, or is he in New York, or is he in Florida where he got his degrees? He's from the University of South Florida where he got his degrees at. His interests are in the areas that we all should be investigating: immigrant issues and education, educational and non-educational experiences of immigrant students. I'm really interested in refugee students, cross-cultural learning experience of Black immigrant students, cultural education, global international education, education in sub-Saharan Africa, multicultural online education. So Alex is unique because he's the only person who's got an article, I think, in the special issue here, as well as the second special issue of BJET in the same month, the same issue. They had two special issues. So the first one he did is Diverse Student Perspectives on Privacy and Technology Integration in Higher Education, with several colleagues of his, 4 different colleagues. And the second article, he has two, he publishes a lot. The second one's on strategies for overcoming the digital divide during COVID-19 pandemic in higher education institutions in Ghana. And that special issue was on technology integration in higher education in Africa, philosophical, theoretical, and policy practice perspectives by Samuel Ampanshach, can't pronounce it right, and his colleague. They worked on this at the same time Stephanie did hers. So Alex, I'm not sure you could talk about either one of these if you want to. I'm sure we'd be enlightened and really interested in both those papers, but particularly the one for this issue. But how I got to know you is reading some of your cross-cultural work. And I don't know what journal you were. It was Teachers College Press or something from Columbia Teachers College had their own newsletter or their own journal for a while. And I was reading that a lot. And you had a piece in there about getting students to collaborate cross-culturally, and my team was interested in that. And I may have contacted you at that time, as maybe 7-8 years ago or so. And then we met together at AERA in Chicago and had a little celebratory ending to the AERA conference last year, and then I have pictures with. I'll try and send them to I'll try and put them up before we're done here tonight. I got pictures with Alex at my hotel. He was standing outside on Saturday late afternoon, so in Philadelphia. So I just saw him 4 days ago in Philadelphia, and I get to see you again. Is there anything you'd like to comment on that Stephanie said, or anything you've heard so far that, first of all, you'd like to comment on? Anything you'd like to add to your bio that would tell us more? I mean, are you originally from Ghana? Is that what got you interested in research in Ghana? Do you have colleagues there? So anything.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me in your class. Yeah, we actually met 2014 when I interviewed at IU. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I interviewed. Yeah. So, hello. Good evening to everyone. Like we say in Britain. My name is Alex Kumi Yeboah. There are other names, but just the Kumi Yeboah is okay. I was born and raised in Ghana, West Africa. It's a former British colony, like they say. If you go there and you say that, they'll get angry anyway. They don't like anything to do with colonization. So, and a little bit stint up in UK, and then my dad in the late 70s, there was an oil boom in Nigeria. So my dad was a teacher. So I live in Nigeria a little bit. Like a year in South Africa during the apartheid, and then Zambia, and then back to Ghana, and then after first college, then I moved to Florida. So kind of like a global person by nature. So in short, I was a K-12 teacher in Florida, specifically Tampa. And then I got into higher education, completed, spent a year at Dalton State. It's a small state college in North Georgia, close to Tennessee, for a year. And then I moved to University at Albany in the SUNY system. It's one of the R1 schools in the SUNY system. I think it's 3: Stony Brook here, and then Buffalo. Buffalo is the flagship. And then I think Binghamton is getting close to there. So my research area is specifically based on my experience.
Alex,
academic.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
SUNY Albany is getting really known for AI.
Yes.
And they had an advertisement in the Chronicle of Education this week about AI, and they hired one of our students.
Yeah,
Azul, got hired. One of our graduates is working there with you.
Yes.
And one of my good colleagues, Peter Shea, is the editor of the Online Learning Journal. He's also at SUNY Albany.
That's my boss.
Him in the fall, as your boss. So there's a lot of good people at SUNY Albany.
Yeah.
Or now University of Albany. They've changed their name. It used to be
Albany,
SUNY Albany. And so, so tell us about your research then.
Yeah. So without wasting my time, my research is that the educational and non-educational experiences of immigrants, in short. That was what it was 2 strands. And then the other one was everything that we talk about, multiculturalism, diversity, everything in the classroom. And then I wanted to do something. Do we have that in the online learning environment? I moved from China. I'm taking online classes. Is the instructor taking care of me so far as my, language, my cultures, the the materials that I read? Do I get the examples? I moved from Bangladesh. In the classroom, am I getting office hours? But what about in the online environment? So after getting tenure, my research has I just now more concentrated on diversity issues or diversity in the online learning environment. That has been my area now. So like you said, if you just Google search diversity in online learning, my name just pops up. So as one of the first who have been writing so much about diversity. So this paper, after you all know, adaptive technologies has increased, especially during the COVID and after COVID. Almost every university in the world moved online in one way or the other, either high-flex, hybrid, fully online, any other method. In sub-Saharan Africa, they were using even Facebook, anything that they can use to, communicate to students. With students, that's what they did. United States and other countries are more advanced, so there was more of a hybrid, and then Zoom and other things, Blackboard, Canvas, Desire to Learn, whatever, LMS that they could use. So yeah, there was a colleague, I invited him, but unfortunately he lost his dad, so he couldn't come. He's Benjamin Yankson. He's a Ghanaian, but also raised in Canada, but then he works at UAlbany. He's one of the AI guys. So he's in the cybersecurity. So we collaborated and we conducted this study to look at undergraduate and graduate students who are considered diverse or would have the diverse background. What is their perception about this privacy? Does it affect them? What is the understanding? What are some of the challenges that they face as students? We talked about student privacy, data encroachment, and stuff like that. Do we have anything that diverse students also say about what they see as data privacy? So Dr. Yankson, being a cybersecurity expert, we conducted this interview here at University at Albany after IRB approval. So interesting, the other professors have talked about in detail about privacy and stuff like that. What we found, without wasting much time, what we found was very interesting. Of course, the paper actually didn't allow us to, I talk a lot, so they didn't allow me to put everything in here. So it was, the first thing was most students, you'll be surprised, most students have heard about the word FEPA, but they don't understand what FEPA is. Like Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FEPA, which is a big thing in the United States, but they didn't understand. They know, the university protects their, data, their information, but they don't even know. All that they've heard is when they've completed a form, it says FEPA, it's FEPA law. So there was a little bit, or I would say, they had an issue with fear and anxiety about the data encroachment. That I'm putting this information out there, but what about if it's breached? What is the institution going to do? I get emails and I respond to it, and then the ITS office, send me an email and say, oh, your data has been breached. Who is going to protect me? What is going on? So our study was just the basic. I think your TA had said, previously had taken pictures and stuff like that about kids, and at the end it was a good idea, just to kind of a reflection at the elementary stage. But now it's like a big issue because of social media and stuff. So same thing here. Most of the students didn't know that the information that they put out there, now that they know that their information has been hacked, what is the consequence? How can they redeem themselves? So there's that kind of fear, especially taking an online class when they are using a Zoom and Google Hangout and all the others. I can say this is a quote. Currently, I don't have a computer or laptop and have to use the school's computer lab or laptops in the library for my schoolwork. I received an email about possible data breach in the university IT system. The university promised to resolve the issues, but have not heard anything from the school authorities yet. So that's that kind of fear that, hey, it might not be that their system has been hacked, but the university said something has happened. So the fact that he or she used the university computer, now there's that kind of fear. So that was one of the, and then I have the data that some of them were saying that because of that, I'm not a big fan of the online learning because the last time I used, blah, 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 this is what happened. Others will also say, I don't have a choice. Everything is moving online. My assignment, everything I have to type, I have to submit electronically and stuff like that. The other one that was huge was the challenges, the bureaucracy at the university system. That's where they said they've heard about something called FEPA. There's a law. Some of them will say, I hear there's a law that protects us. But when something happens and then you call and it's like you are with your own, to kind of redeem what happened. An interesting thing that we didn't put it out here in the paper was somebody might have used the laptop or whatever source. It could be at home, but then when something happens, all of a sudden the equation, it's like a quadratic equation. The final product is X is equals to everything is the school. So we asked them, how do you know is the school, that made your information out there? And they said, I don't know. I use more often, so far as internet connection is concerned, I use more often at school than at home, or in the dormitory. So that's what we didn't put that information here. So bureaucracy and then lack of educational awareness. Like I said, I think I didn't say that earlier, but of all the 40, and then now we are even trying to do the quantitative, you could see that we're now doing faculty. There's a lack of educational awareness so far as the data awareness and how to, for example, how do I use lock my PDF? I don't know how to do it. How do I use long password, just to protect myself? They don't know. So things that students need to do, this time is across board, to protect their information or, avoid data encroachment is really lacking. And it's among even faculty, some of them, should I change my password regularly, every 6 months here and there? No clue about it. So somebody's in a graduate school and said, this is what I've been using as my password for the past 4 years. And then Dr. Youngson would say, no, you need to change this. Oh, I didn't know about that. So these were some for us. These were some, so far as racially diverse students are concerned, this was some of the stuff that pops up. I was thinking, I went in with my bias that there's going to be a digital divide here, but it wasn't as, abundant like I had hoped for. Some of them had access to internet and everything. The other one was the privacy concern so far as social media is concerned, especially during the COVID, when in the LMX, learning management system, some faculty has to, connect their LMS to social media, use like WhatsApp and other stuff, so there were so much concern about the use of social media and how some of their information, certain things that in terms of not their information, but certain things that they had posted. And some few students had indicated that after the COVID, they used the social media, they started getting emails. So they thought, did the university just release our information to this group? Because I'm not expecting these marketers to contact me for, other stuff, to fill survey, to do this, to buy stuff. So it might not be the case, but that's their perception, because our study was more perception. They perceive that the university, for some reason, released their information to the outside for book marketers and other stuff. So these were some of the like major themes that really emerged from our study. Without, so I'll be open to more questions, and then I think with more questions, I'll be able to elaborate more.
Okay, thank you.
There was a theory that we use, the calculus, but Dr. Youngson is more of a cybersecurity guy, so he kind of used the calculus theory. He could have more explained it more and how it relates to our study that we did. Yeah.
Comments or questions for Alex? Go.
I'm sorry, my son just snuck in for a second on the comment here just a minute ago. I apologize.
We'll let your son ask a question too. Who would like to jump in and ask a question or a comment? Can you, from my perspective, can you give us more about the population you studied, the context?
Yeah, the data collection was at 2022, and mostly we used they had to let us define Hispanic students, non-white, and then African American population. Let me read a sample here. So it was basically African American and then Hispanic population. That's what we use. We had agreed that students coming from China, South Korea, India, are more also used to the computer and stuff like that. So we use the African American population and then Hispanic, and then we term it as ethnically, culturally diverse, backgrounds. And then they were mostly from 4 academic disciplines: College of Education, Department of Leadership and Policy Studies, Curriculum and Instruction, and Counseling Psychology. And then we have the Social Sciences, that is the Department of Economics, African American Studies, Psychology, Geography, and Sociology. And then we have the Business, which is Accounting, Management, Marketing, and Finance. And then Health Sciences, we have the School of Public Health. So these were the participants, that's where they were from. And I must say that was very, very difficult getting this population. It wasn't easy. Yeah.
Why? Was IRB difficult or?
Although University at Albany, based on the location, would say that they have more than 35 minorities population, but they are mostly the undergrad. The graduate school doesn't have so much diverse population. And then the other one was it was after just the COVID. So doing an interview, just contacting students and then agreeing, some of them will agree. Once you pop up the Zoom interview, they won't show up, so it was really difficult. Initially we had wanted to do the quantitative, but unfortunately the response rate was so low, so the power of the study was insignificant. So we just canceled that and then decided to do the interviews. So that was how it made. So we got the IRB even a year before, and maybe it's something that I just didn't want to do like 5 or 10 and make it a case study. I just wanted more than 20. So that was probably also the reason why. I just wanted a little bit larger sample so far as qualitative is concerned, just to make the study more, like in qualitative, the believability or the trustworthiness to be more stronger. Yeah, so.
I agree. I've done some with 20. It takes a while.
Yes.
Anyone want to ask a question or a comment now? Marisa, you haven't been talked all night. I'm sorry I didn't allow I cut you off maybe before. So thank you for jumping in. Risa.
I don't know. It's a question. I don't know what is it, but maybe it's a new field of research for Alex. But I'm addressing Alex and I'm talking with him. Alex, I'm about to do a self-study in. In addition to be here as PhD student, I'm teaching a course, and I'm doing to do my self-study in cultural difference.
Yeah.
I'm an international student. I'm from Iran.
Yeah.
And sure, there is a lot of cultural differences between me and my students, you know.
Yeah.
And when you started that you are a global man, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this definition about yourself, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not that much global man like you.
Yeah.
But I wonder, cultural difference usually causes problem in in-person classes, you know,
Yes.
in-person courses. I wonder, is there any research or does it matter in online classes or not? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Imagine you're the instructor of an online course an online course, and your students, they are not from the same culture, from your own
Yes.
culture. I wonder, is there any research in this area or not?
Yes,
Before
there
you
is.
answer, before you answer, he's a science education student, just so you are
Yes.
a doctoral student in science
Yeah.
education. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah, there is. The Chronicles of Higher Ed had published a piece about diversity in online learning. They reference a study I did. I published at a teachers college. Yeah, several times. There's a big argument. Some people will say there is no. I teach counseling psychology. You know, I put my materials there. I meet students regularly. You know, you just go there. There is a discussion forum. You know, as an international student, you go in there, you introduce yourself, and then, you know, you just answer the question. There's a group work. You know, luckily these days, Zoom, Google Hangouts and stuff like that, you do. But the study that I did, and it's being supported by other several studies, found out that if you are the most international student, not all, they will say that there are other studies that came earlier and said, oh, some international students actually prefer online because that's where they are not shielded by any shame of speaking out and stuff like that. So they'll put everything there. My study found out that, yes, it is true, but not all the times. The international student would like to get examples, just like in the face-to-face class or in person, some of the materials that he or she can relate to. Number two, having that the socialization online, like the teaching presence, the social presence, the learning presence, you know, is also very important. Sometimes most international students or diverse students will post something because the content of everything that they are studying is, you may need examples, may quote example in Bangladesh, you know, example, and 90% of the students are domestic from here. They end up not responding to him or her like they would have used to if they really understood what, you know, the person had posted. So to avoid that, some of the stuff that some studies have recommended, that is the first week, there should be that the cultural awareness, you know, project where, like the way I introduce myself, you know, you introduce yourself, who you are, you know, where you have been, your experience, work experience, teaching experience. You share with a short PowerPoint, 5 slides. It could be audio recorded, you know, and then students will comment on it. And then some of the readings as well, if the instructor can give you the opportunity to use examples in your background, you know, so that there's kind of like a cultural tolerance in the online space. You know, just example like what Dr. Bank is doing. You know, you feel free, at least you've seen somebody that you can relate to. But most online classes is just the social presence is not there. It's just the teaching presence. And even the learning presence is not being measured. You know, it's just, I took a quiz, I answered my post, I submit my assignment, that's it. You know, I just responded to 2 people, that's it. You know, so the social presence, you don't see it like this class has done. So yes, it is there. When you interview international students, I was doing a presentation here, and the professor, I'm going to use the word attack, but not like physical attack. He said, no, I disagree with you. I've been teaching online for 10 years. So I disagree with you that international students do not feel blah, 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 blah. And then there was a visiting scholar, from China and said, something, I'm in this class, I'm in a class, as a visiting fellow. I'm facing this exact challenges that this young man is just presenting. It was a shock to everybody. He said, yes, when I post, people come in there, the last 2 days, so I was wondering why, so yes, there is, you can actually do a study on that. There are few articles, literature out there that you can do. Yeah. Yeah, you can post something, about Iran, and then somebody's like, what is this? I don't know. But if in the first week of the class, you had introduced yourself with a project, something little bit of who you are and where you're coming from and how it's going to take time for you to immerse yourself into the cultures here, people will understand it. So once there's that cultural tolerance at the first 2 weeks in class, yes, you could see that you can socialize in the online space. Yeah.
Risa, you were going to say something?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to actually say this, like, this is really important, actually, that you took the time to not only model for us at the very beginning, but you kind of wrap that back into the conversation here. But I love that example of trying to push the learners to consider their own positionality.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge I don't know, a huge point that is very much overlooked. And it definitely should not be. I took one of my multicultural education classes that I took when I was in undergrad. It pushed a lot of students. Keep in mind, I'm from rural Indiana, okay, and I attended Purdue University, so a lot of the students were coming there from the same situation that I was. And not that it was a bad situation, but we hadn't had the opportunity to interact with a lot of people from diverse backgrounds before, and I absolutely loved the fact that was what we started out with in that course, and I think that I like that you simplified it at the beginning. You did it without telling us what you were doing. And then you just brought it back up here at the end, and this is phenomenal. This is really good, and I think that's something that's very important and overlooked in a lot of not just education courses, but a lot of areas in society as well. I think that can definitely be utilized and be a very powerful tool for many individuals to utilize. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, most international students take 3 to 5 years to immerse into the cultures in the United States. I just had somebody from Ghana, but our system is the British system, where Professor Bong would have been the sole talker here, and we just listen.
Yeah.
You don't ask questions. So our system is entirely different. The professor is the Lord, and then everybody is, the servant, and you listen. So when they come in here, it could be from KG up to the PhD level. You don't talk. Once the professor talks, that's it. You don't ask questions. The smartest kid in the class or the smartest students in the class is the one who is very quiet.
That's really funny
talk,
because I taught in England for 4 years, actually. And so I know exactly what you're talking about the British educational system. Yeah.
Yes. The smartest kid is the quiet one. The one who is not good is like my type, who is always, talking. I can't tell you how many canes, the capital punishment when I was in elementary school that I had. Yeah.
I had none
they
doing that to
stop
my
it,
hands, but
in the
okay.
80s and 90s, teacher walks into the classroom. Who was talking? Everybody will mention my name, and then I'll get it. Yes, because I talk a lot. So all the time I was being, whipped, for talking, yeah. So this is still in us. When we come in here, some of the little things that are the international student take online class, they need some, I would say like a detailed orientation. into even, just, navigating through the system, Blackboard, Canvas, you'll be surprised, it's a problem. And these are some of could be called as more of educational differences, the cross-cultural differences, how to ask a professor questions and stuff like that. Yeah.
We only have time for one more question from people, but before someone asks it, are you planning to write a book with all your research and summarize it all, or have you already done that?
No, I've not done that. There's people says I should do that.
Yeah.
So I'm planning maybe next year or later this year, I'll start writing introduction and stuff like that. Yeah.
What do you think the title will be? Top, as a general.
Maybe cross-cultural collaboration in online learning, something like that. Yeah.
So we'll all be buying it. Everyone here is going to buy a copy or 2 copies, one for our friends and one for us. Yeah, exactly. Does anyone want to ask the last question or comment?
Yeah, it's late. So
want to jump in? If not, I have one.
Okay.
But sure, no one else wants to jump in here. Xiaojing, you're quiet again. Xiaojing, you want to say anything?
I don't really have a question, but I'm really very inspired. I'd have to say that at the same time, also trying to read your article on the multicultural education for the pre-service teachers, and interested in that because, I work with language teachers, and I feel that language teachers maybe have a very good advantage in how do you say, helping other teachers to understand the importance of multicultural understanding. Yeah.
So my question for you is, thank you, Xiaojing. Thank you, everybody, tonight. It's a little longer night than normal, but thank Alice for staying longer. But my question for you is, when in your career did you realize that you'd be doing what you're doing now? And where were you? Were you living in Ghana at the time, in London at the time, and some in South Florida at the time, Georgia at the time? I mean, you've been to a lot of places. When did you realize you knew this was where you wanted to spend your lives, your passion would be?
It's a very interesting question. The short answer is I was born into a family of educators. I had an uncle who graduated from Oxford in the early 80s. I was little, and he was teaching in a university. So I wanted to be like him, And then I had another uncle from my father's side who actually came to Ghana. He's we call ENT, ear, throat, nose and throat, ear, nose and throat. The ENT.
A doctor.
Yes,
ENT.
doctor.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you have a professorial uncle and a doctor and a real medical doctor.
Yes. So he got a scholarship to Germany and then to be dentistry, and then he came back with something they call professor doctor because he got a dentistry, an MD, and then he did a PhD in the ENT. So he came and he was a professor doctor. So both sides. So I wanted to be like them, but I didn't know when. Yeah. So in Florida, as a middle school teacher, high school teacher, and then I got an email, like a massive email, and said, "Hey, we are recruiting for teachers to get into PhD program. If you are interested, just email this, write a GRE." And then so immediately I saw the email, I said, "That's it, I'm going in." Yeah. So I would say I was born to get into where I am today. Yeah, I was motivated, as a little boy. Yeah, just to, the craving to, get to where I am today. It's kind of
we're
like,
glad
yeah,
where you are today is right here with us tonight. And so I'm just going to put a couple people on the spot. Vanessa, Sumin, and Sung-hee, I'd like you to give 3 or 4 or 5 real quick words for Alex tonight as a thank you and say goodbye. Sumin?
Thank you for your impressive presentation.
Yeah.
Sung-hee?
Yes, I have no question. I'm very impressed with your presentation. I didn't know that there is there is a diversity issue in online lectures. So I want to find your article again. Yes, thank you so much.
Maybe you can ask Alice to send us his favorite 3 articles and I can forward them to the class. What do you think your most influential or impactful, given the topics we discussed tonight? And then send it, and I'll forward it to people in here because you've written much more before the special issue.
Yeah.
And so we can benefit from that. Vanessa, would you like to be the final one that says some words here tonight?
Sure. Your work is very important, and I really appreciate the perspective that your research is providing on diversity, especially with the climate that we're in, at least here in the United States, with diversity programs coming under attack at colleges and universities. So I think that this type of work is extremely important and timely. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Alex. Go ahead.
Yeah, my TA is around my first TA actually received the best research paper award in the SIG online teaching and learning. So yeah.
Your TA got your best award?
Yes, yeah.
So
that's my first. Yeah,
I'm a member of that SIG. I helped start that SIG, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So he's very happy that the paper that is an extension of this study. The study about COVID-19 impact about faculty research and teaching and service, and how, so it was a quantitative study. So he's very happy. So yeah.
That's what we want our TAs to be happy, right, Bo? And all my visiting
I want that award.
Yeah.
So this
So
is
thanks for coming. Thanks for the invitation. This is my second time stint with IU. Yeah. The first time in 2014 when I spent 3 days there for the interview. Yeah.
Right, in IST.
Yeah.
So, right. So thank you, Alex, for coming back to IU. And someday we're going to get you here for a longer stint, maybe, come visit the summer institutes that we have here for ACT. Sometimes, you can make appearance there. I want to thank everyone for presenting tonight, including Alex. This is a wonderful week 14 in R678 in the spring of 2024. Next week is the final week, week 15, Monday at 6 o'clock. We're going to have students present their final projects just in any way you want to present. Just talk about it, present some slides, whatever you would like to show or talk about as a way to celebrate the end of the semester. Just share final projects with one another. We might have breakouts talking about your final projects, whatever ones you want to talk about. Just leave it open that way. I might add something to it that I'll do, but I haven't, or that Bo and I will do, but I haven't decided what that will be. I'll talk to Bo after this. But again, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording at this point. Week 14, 6, 7, 8. Fine. And it's